Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy 420, where today we are going to be continuing and ending our 2019 Fantasy Baseball preview with our This or That series. This is going to be my last 2019 MLB preseason video. I have about 25 more in a playlist that I'll link to after this channel. Hopefully you'll all take a look and prepare yourself and your team, because there's still plenty of time to draft going forward. I've mentioned this before. The MLB season is really long, and it has started, but even if you miss this first week's games, no big deal. There's plenty of time for you to dive in and have a lot of fun and win yourself a fantasy championship. So moving forward with baseball videos, it'll be more about season-long maintenance, analysis on trades, or anything else big that happens, to-start pitchers, important pickups, all that good stuff. So I'll be back with some more of those videos, season-long updates, so we'll be looking forward to those. But today we'll be talking about two players who play the same position and are going in about the same round of season-long fantasy baseball drafts. And those two players today are two outfielders who are projected to hit leadoff for their respective teams, and they're going in about the 11th round. And I like both of these players a lot, so this is going to be a really hard decision. The first player is going to be Hicks, whose aggregate ranking is around 129th according to fantasypros.com. And we're going to be going up against Mallex Smith, who's pre-ranked at 132nd, so just at the end of our 11th round. And I consider these guys both great round picks in the late rounds and some league winners. So without further ado, before we can levy a verdict, we're going to talk about some evidence. And our first piece of evidence that we're going to discuss is their respective careers up to this point, and maybe more importantly, last year in particular's recap for each player. The first player we're going to start with is Hicks. He's a former first-round pick in Major League Baseball, so obviously a lot of teams were very high on his talent. He's going to be going into his age 29 season, so just about hitting his prime. He played for 3 years in the Twins organization and then was traded to the Yankees, where he's been for the last 3 seasons. He underwhelmed for the first 4 years in the majors, but people were just waiting on the talent, especially the Yankees, with that lineup that they have. He showed a lot of improvement in 2017 and then really broke out last year to the point where he was actually 22nd overall in American League MVP voting. So we'll dive into those numbers. He played 137 games last year. He hit 27 home runs, which is almost double his career best previously and was a big power spike for him. And that's compared to about 19 expected home runs if we were to expect him to play 162 games. He scored 90 runs, which was also up from a 77 run expected. He had 79 RBIs, which was up from a 65 RBI expected. He had 11 stolen bases, which was a little bit down from 14, and he had 248 average, which is a little bit above his 236. So a big power spike, big numbers across the board, really good year, and they were expecting a little bit more of a jump this year, which would be a little bit expected. I mean, he's, like I said, going into his prime, and that's a big thing. However, it's important to note he is starting this year on the injured list with a lower back sprain, and it's actually expected to keep him out until late April. So while good fantasy players will be able to navigate through this, it is important to note because that's 5 weeks of the season if your league already started, and these 5 weeks are important too. So it's important to know that, and it's important to know that he's going to need to get rolling once he comes back as well. So moving on to Mallex Smith, he was a 13th round pick in the major leagues. He went back to school because he didn't like that. He was then redrafted, traded twice before he finally played 2017 and 2018 in Tampa Bay. So while we look at these numbers, it's important to notice that he was playing in Tampa Bay, not a very good lineup, not a lot of protection around him, in front of him. So that's important to note. He's also a prototypical leadoff hitter, a little bit different from Hicks's power. He's a speed demon and a base path monster. So if he gets on base, he's a big threat to steal. So he played 141 games last year, scored 65 runs, a little bit down from a 70 run expected, only 2 home runs, a little bit down from a 4 home run expected. Once again, not expecting much power at all. 40 RBIs, not much difference from a 42 RBI expected, but 40 stolen bases. So that's obviously huge. A potential league shifter if he gets on base more, if he plays every single day, gets more chances, then he's going to get on base more, get more stolen bases. And this late in the draft, that category, which is so few, he could really win you some leagues. And he hit 296 last year, which is up from a 277 average. So we might expect that to even go up and him get on base even more. So the next piece of evidence we'll look at for each player are important offseason changes for the team and that player in particular. We'll start with Aaron Hicks. I've obviously spoken probably ad nauseum about the Yankees offense this offseason. It's probably the best offense in the league. And with all that momentum, the offseason plan was to get Aaron Hicks from 6th or lower into leadoff. And I believe that would be so huge for his fantasy value. Just more at-bats, more opportunities in that potent lineup. Obviously, would expect his runs and average to go up as he's going to be protected by some of the best hitters in the game. He's also a capable base stealer. He's not like Mallex Smith, but if he gets on base more, he can do it, and we would expect more chances to lead to more stolen bases. However, that injury did hit, so I would expect the leadoff to happen, but it is up in question at this point. It's depending how the team's playing. If they're obviously rolling along, they'll start him a little bit lower in the order, and if he comes back and is showing a little bit of signs of regression, or if he's not coming back swinging, then it's going to be more dependent on how his team's playing at the time. However, it is also to note that he did sign a 7-year, $70 million extension. So either way, if he comes back, even if he doesn't play well, he's going to play at the bottom of that lineup throughout the entire year. And that's still an important spot to have. He's still going to hit some home runs, still provide decent fantasy value. So even the organization loves him is really important. And he's still, even if he regresses and has a bad season, mediocre overall, comes back from his injury and doesn't do anything impressive, he's still going to be decently valuable bench piece. So if everything goes right, he's a league winner, and there's a very big upside for him either way. With Mallex Smith, a little bit of a different situation. He was traded to the Seattle Mariners. Obviously, that's a big boost to him in terms of lineup potency. They signed Omar Narvaez to catch for them, a young White Sox catcher who wasn't getting enough run, they thought. And that allowed them to trade Mike Zunino, their previous catcher, for Mallex Smith. And I just think this was a huge win for both sides. It gave them a center fielder, which they needed, a leadoff hitter, which they needed as D. Gordon is getting a little bit older. And he just fits that team and that need perfectly. He didn't get an extension when he was signed, so he's still going to be that hungry player who's been traded around. Now he's going to have a team that bought into him, fulfill that role, hopefully get a big contract, and it was just a great deal for both parties, and hopefully that'll have a snowball effect going into him in the season. So big upgrade in lineup, big upgrade in expectations, because there's no way Tampa Bay was going to finish higher than the Red Sox and Yankees in that division, so I don't think there's any way they're going to win the division. And I believe the Mariners were a much better wild card chance if everything went right for them, or more things went right for them. They have a much higher chance of making it than the Devil Rays. So I just think this was a big trade overall for Mallex Smith, and he should have a lot of incentive to have a big season and produce in that leadoff spot for the team. So with all those things being said, I think we have enough evidence to make our final verdict of the season. And this was really so hard. These were two of my favorite sleepers going into drafts. I would love to buy into both of these guys. I have in a lot of best ball leagues and season-long leagues. Even as I'm saying the names, it's a little bit hard for me to pick. And I do want to note, it is important to say, if you need the power numbers, then I think that would obviously tilt Hicks in your favor. If you have early round home run hitters, then you can go for late round stolen bases. That would obviously tilt Mallex Smith in your favor. But just in a vacuum, if I can only pick one guy, I'd probably have to go Mallex Smith. Those 5 weeks being injured for Aaron Hicks, if you started your league overall, it does hurt him. Like I said, Mallex Smith will already be rolling. Hicks will have to come back from that injury and produce. And depending on how well that team is doing, he might have his aspirations moved to lower in that order. I just think that everything rolling right for Smith, the offseason helping. He has a big 2018 coming, and I would really buy into him this late into drafts. He's a league changer with those stolen bases. I would expect that average to go up with that better team, like I mentioned, and I would really buy into him. That being said, they're both great fantasy players. If you're a great fantasy owner, especially, you can buy into the fact you can throw Hicks on the DL, navigate through some free agency pickups, and if Hicks comes back, comes to that leadoff spot like I would expect him to do eventually, he's going to be a great late season league winner for a lot of teams. So I wouldn't mind either pick. I love either pick, and I would really expect both players to have a great season moving forward. Thanks for listening as always, guys. It's a pleasure. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Have a great afternoon as always, and we'll be moving on to the MLB season and some NFL preseason talk. With that being said, everybody, have a great afternoon and peace.